In the previous recording, we talked about the control systems design process. It's a fairly generic outline. In the textbook for Bishop Dorff, they have a very specific control systems design process that they talk about. And many of the pieces in this design process correspond directly to the chapters in the book or some of the exercises you'll be doing. So how is their design process different? Well, in the beginning, the ideas are sort of the same. We want to find out the goals of our controller. What is it that we want to do? What do we control? What variables do we have? What actuators do we have control over when we're trying to control those variables? Then we determine what are the specifications of the system. How do we estimate the system configuration? What models will we be using? So this is going to be based in a sense on the physics of the system and maybe the shape of the controller that we've selected. Once we've determined the model and we've determined a controller that we'd like to use, we have to establish the parameters for that controller. And then we analyze those parameters. The analysis portion tells us whether or not the parameters we've selected seem to be appropriate. So similar to the other case, we consider these as blocks in a process, and there's some feedback loops too. In this case, we have some study and understanding of the constraints that will prevent us from making some choices in our design. So some of the specifications will tell us whether we can or cannot use certain kinds of controllers. Some of the system configuration options that we may have available will prevent us from making some kinds of decisions. Once we understand our constraints, now we can do modeling and analysis to make sure that our system obeys those constraints. And then once we are happy with how we've modeled the system, we do a design and a little bit more of analysis to make sure that our design still meets those constraints. And then we do verification and validation, or V&V. If V&V fails, if we're not happy with it, we go back to editing the system configuration, or maybe even back above to the goals and specifications. So you can tie this directly back to the Dorff-Bishop text. In many of the examples that you'll see in the text or in some of the homework assignments, they'll be focusing in different portions of this design process. You may want to go back and look at this every once in a while to get the 10,000-foot view about what you're learning in the class. Because we're interested in the class in sort of this sequence of events. We want to understand the system first. Why are we controlling something and what we'll be controlling? How do we model the system so that we can do that kind of control? Then how do we do the analysis and design and the verification and validation? This is essentially our trip through the class.